Hello everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Google Pixel 6 and see if this particular phone is still worth buying in 2024. Now, I will definitely tell you, I loved the Google Pixel 6 when it first came out, and I do think it was a very interesting choice from Google to make a device like this. I think it definitely made a lot of sense at that time, and I do think it's still a very good, device for the most part. It's not perfect or anything, but I would say that if you are in the market, this isn't really that bad of an option, and I will definitely say the Pixel 8 and even the Pixel 7 have made pretty big changes compared to the Pixel 6, but I still think this is a pretty decent phone. And if you want to pick up this phone or some of the latest phones I would recommend buying, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Google Pixel 6, this particular phone on the front has a 6.4-inch AMOLED display. Now, I actually will tell you that this display on this phone isn't really even that bad. It's a pretty good panel. It's a 90Hz display at that as well. And I would probably tell you that if you're in the market, this is a pretty decent option. It's not a perfect display, and the Pixel 8's display is definitely much better than this thing, but I think it looks good enough for the most part. The only things I'm not the biggest fan of in this particular phone, to be honest, is like the kind of bezel around it. It kind of gives me the impression that it's like I don't know what they were trying to do here, to be honest, but it's not like my favorite type of looking phone in my opinion. But another thing is that the actual panel itself isn't amazing either. Like, it doesn't really look like that amazing of a display, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think it's a good looking phone, and if you're trying to get a phone to kind of just mess with here and there, then this is a good option. They've gone down in value so much that I do think that they're worth buying, and if you don't like it, you can always resell it, or if you want to use it for a couple months, you can still probably maintain its resale value for the most part as well. Now you're getting the fingerprint sensor display, hole punch display at that, 90Hz, a lot of good stuff going on with it too. The bezels, or like this side of this phone, is basically almost flat but a little curved, so kind of modern a little bit too. You're getting a USB Type-C port on the bottom, which is great, and on the back side you're getting the standard glass back. So not like a plastic back on the 6A or the 7A. This is a full-on glass back, which feels very good in the hand, and dual camera setup on the top, kind of across. And if you remember what Google did with this particular phone, was that they actually went through and basically gave us a little bit of a different design language than they gave us before. Before, Google was basically giving us this I don't know what they were doing. They were like making weird changes every year. This time they found a design language that worked and they kept at it. And I really like Google for doing that. They didn't go and try to change things up like crazy like they did before. They kept it the same, and I think they did a tremendous job from that particular perspective. So from the outside, it's still missing a few things that we'd expect from some flagships nowadays. Maybe like a 120Hz display or a triple camera setup on the back or something like that, but it's still a very good looking phone nonetheless. And I do think Google did a very good job with the Google Pixel 6. So on the exterior, I would probably say it gets a thumbs up from me. Now from the camera side of things, this thing does have that dual camera setup on the back and that single 8-megapixel camera on the front. Now, compared to the main flagship, the Pro model, the Google Pixel 6 Pro, this one doesn't have as good of a camera as that thing, as you probably expect. But this thing, you're getting that 4K at 60 on the back and that 1080p at 30 on the front. I think it's a good camera. It's above average for sure for a 2021 phone. And I would say that for a lot of things you're probably going to do, you're probably going to have a pretty good time with it. I think it's a good camera. I did kind of do some Instagram and Snapchat tests before on this phone, and I will tell you, it didn't really do that great of a job at that moment. And I do feel like that was kind of one of the weirder things going on for this particular phone. Like, I do feel like Google could have done a little bit of a better job, especially when this phone is a camera-focused phone. I feel like they didn't do the best job from that perspective, but I think it's totally understandable and it's okay for the most part. But some other things to keep in mind here too is that this phone, at least compared to some of the newer ones, you are basically getting a little bit of a better device on some of the latest Pixels in a lot of the phones in general now. I feel like Google really found their way probably since the Pixel 6, but the Pixel 7's camera was good, the Pixel 8's camera was very good as well, and I feel like that's some really, really good stuff they can actually end up doing. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Like, I do feel like they did a better job probably on the newer phones, which is expected, but I do feel like the Pixel 6, the main thing it's missing is just 4K 60 on the front, and a majority of phones nowadays do have some sort of 8K capability that they have, but the fact that this one doesn't have it is also not that big of a deal, and it's kind of expected, I guess, at this day and age. So from that specific viewpoint, that kind of covers it up from the camera side. Now, software longevity side, this is something that's very interesting with this particular phone. So with the Google Pixel 6, you may know this already, this phone is actually pretty much it's still supported with software, so it's still going to be here for quite a bit of time. But the craziest thing is that the Google Pixel 6 kind of got overshadowed by the Pixel 8. the Pixel 8 is going to be here for such a long period of time that it's not even funny. Then the Pixel 8 is just getting started. So the fact that the Pixel 8 is getting like 7 years of software updates from its initial release date, and the Pixel 6 is probably getting like another year or two, it makes it like not even fair. Like it makes so much more sense to buy something like the Pixel 8 at that moment rather than buying something like this. And I've seen that time and time and time again. It's not anything crazy. It's just kind of what happens with the latest devices. You're going to be getting a much better phone on the newest phones. And I mean, this is basically no exception. I think Google did a really good job on the Pixel 8s. And I mean, when the newer phones come out, you want it to be better and everything than the older generation. So it completely makes sense. But how crazy is that? That the difference between the Pixel 8 and the Pixel 6, there's going to be years and years and years of difference in the software perspective, which is pretty insane. So, and that right there is a pretty crazy thing going on there too. Now, on top of that, from the performance side, this phone inside does have that Google Tensor G1 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM. I personally do think that this phone's performance is actually pretty good for how old, this phone's not like that old. It's approaching like 3 years old this year. The thing that I do like about this particular phone though, is that you are basically getting a little bit of a, you're getting that Google Tensor chipset, which is great. The only issue I have is that the Tensor chipset really isn't like the craziest best chipset of all time. And I do feel like Google could be doing a little bit of a better job here. I still think compared to the Snapdragon chipsets, the Snapdragon chipsets are just still so much better from everything that I've tested. And that's kind of an annoying thing going on for this particular phone, is that yes, they're making changes here and there for every generation of device that comes out, but I still feel like personally that Google could be doing a little bit of a better job for these chipsets. Even when I compare the Pixel 6 against the Pixel 8, I still feel like there are some things that Google could be doing to improve the performance, but I still think this is a pretty good performing phone for the most part, and there really isn't that much to complain about. I have a few things to complain about here and there, but other than that, I think it's a pretty good phone, and I think the performance side is a good thing. If anything, it's an average thing going on for this phone. It's not something you'd complain about or be super happy about, but I think it's a very, very decent thing going on for this particular device. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you is I think the Google Pixel 6 is a pretty interesting phone when it comes down to it. I like the Pixel 6. I think, when it first came out, it was very good. And I still think it's a very, very good phone, as of this day and age. There's only a few things that I'd even kind of like rubbed off the wrong way with this particular phone. And that's maybe like the display. I feel like the display is good, but you're missing out on things like that 120 hertz display you have in the latest phones. So that right there could be one thing. I also feel like for the other side of things, like with the Google Pixel 6, when compared to the Pixel 8, and I know you shouldn't be comparing your phone against it all the time, but to be honest, when compared against something like the Google Pixel 8, you are getting just such a substantially better device on that particular device that it's not even funny. So what is even the point of buying something like the Pixel 6 when you can spend a little bit more money and buy something like the Pixel 8 and get a much better device from that specific perspective? So it's kind of all over the place. I am very curious to see what you have to say about this though. So let me know in the comment section, what you think. Would you recommend buying the Pixel 6 or would you recommend buying the Pixel 5 or the Pixel 8? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.